philosophy to justify inaction, but does his spiritual duty, even though it may be personally inconvenient. So Kṛṣna chastised Arjuna that he was anarya jushtam. This kind of thinking is not for Aryans. It is for the non-Aryans. Kṛṣna did not approve of Arjuna's inaction. So the whole Bhagavad-gita was spoken to Arjuna to make him Aryan, spiritually progressive. At the end of Bhagavad-gita, Kṛṣna inquired from Arjuna, "What is your decision?" Yatej hasasi tata kuru. And Arjuna replied, Karishye vachanam tava. Bhagavad-gita 1873. Now I shall fight. I shall do whatever you say. And Kṛṣna approved. Saevayang mayatedya yoga prokta puratanaha. Bhakto si me shaka cheti rahasyam hyetad uttamam. That very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you, because you are my devotee as well as my friend, and therefore you can understand the transcendental mystery of this science. Bhagavad-gita 4:3. Now, fighting is not a very good business because it involves killing. But Arjuna was a warrior, a fighter. His duty was to fight for the right cause, so he fought for Kṛṣna. Thus he became a devotee by fighting to satisfy Kṛṣna. So everyone, no matter what their occupation, should be engaged to satisfy Kṛṣna. That is our whole philosophy. Kṛṣna has advised, Sahajam karma konteya sadosham apinatyajet sarvarambha hidoshena dhumenagnir ivavrataha. Every endeavor is covered by some fault, just as fire is covered by smoke. Therefore, one should not give up the work born of his nature, O son of Kunti, even if such work is full of fault. Bhagavad-gita 1848. So one can perform any kind of work for which he is fit, but the result must be given to Kṛṣna. That is the secret. You may work as a brahmana, an intellectual, as a kshatriya, as a warrior, as a businessman, as an engineer, a doctor, or whatever you may be. No type of work is condemned. Every kind of work is spiritual, provided its result is offered to Kṛṣna. That is the secret of work in Kṛṣna consciousness. And according to the esoteric teaching, such work is without any karmic reaction. So, by denying Kṛṣna, the foolish so-called yogis and philosophers and Hindus and whatnot are dooming themselves and anyone who follows them to having to accept the results of their karma and be reborn in the material existence life after life after life. Because any work that we do for our own benefit results in karma, whether good or bad. We have to take another birth in order to accept the results of that karma. So this is attachment to material existence, and it can only be broken by offering the results of our work to Kṛṣna as a sacrifice. And we'll get into this in future installments. The thing that we want to highlight in this particular episode is that Kṛṣna comes to this world specifically to inform everyone of this fact, that if we want freedom from the rounds of birth and death in the material world, we have to work in such a way as to satisfy him. That means, first of all, accepting the background philosophy, the esoteric teaching of the Vedic literature. And this means accepting Bhagavad-gita as it is. In other words, yes, Kṛṣna is famous all over the world, and there are hundreds of editions of the Bhagavad-gita, but most of those misinterpret the Bhagavad-gita to be something impersonal. That Kṛṣna doesn't mean, surrender to him as a person. He means to surrender to the unmanifest Brahman within him, or some such nonsense. No. Kṛṣna says, Manmana bhava mad bhakto, madhyaji mang namaskuru. Surrender to me, think of me, become my devotee, worship me. Mam, that's Sanskrit for me. So Kṛṣna is speaking, and he is a person. So he is always speaking about himself when he says me, mam, moi. How much more clear can it get? Yet they misinterpret because they have a vested interest in denying Kṛṣna. And what is that? Well, if Kṛṣna is not the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and everything is ultimately impersonal, then there's no absolute standard of morality in the universe, and one can do whatever one likes. Therefore, we don't have to surrender to any authority, we don't have to accept any moral standards, and we can engage in sense gratification in an unrestricted manner, just like an animal. Isn't that wonderful? But this nonsense has become the modern standard of so-called religion. Therefore, Bhagavad-gita says, no, you cannot act like an animal, mudha. You cannot act like a miscreant, duskritino. You cannot act like the lowest of mankind, naradhama. You have to do your duty. And your duty is to follow the principles of religion, which are directly enunciated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Religion cannot be concocted by an ordinary man. The standard in the Vedas is that the principles of religion are given by God himself. So God comes in the form of Kṛṣna, speaks Bhagavad-gita, and gives religious principles. He also indicates the opposite. What are irreligious principles? And we will always find that the people who reject Kṛṣna also reject religious principles, and they act irreligiously. They're addicted to illicit sex, meat eating, intoxication, gambling, mental speculation, and so many other kinds of sinful activities. Deception, dissimulation, disinformation. These are the people who have acted for centuries now to keep this esoteric teaching out of the hands of the public. Because if people in general were to become moral, they would become strong. They would think and act according to religious principles, and they would not be so easily seduced by sense gratification and controlled by a central government whose only interest is actually exploiting them economically. So we have to see the motivation behind the disinformation campaign that has existed for centuries to try to cover up the actual Vedic esoteric teaching and substitute some vastly inferior concoction called Hinduism or something else. This is not the actual Vedic philosophy. Because it's not the actual Vedic philosophy, it doesn't deliver the end product of the Vedic process, which is complete self-realization and liberation from material entanglement. So those who advertise themselves as teaching yoga, but do not teach Kṛṣna, are not really teaching yoga. They're teaching some concoction based on some other teaching. And the result of that will not be the same as the original process of yoga given in the Vedas. That's obvious to any thinking person. So now you have the original teaching. You have Bhagavad-gita as it is. So we encourage you to use this teaching, act on it, and reclaim your perfect body. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of My Perfect Body. This is David Hughes, your host, reminding you to visit us on the web at esotericteaching.org, where you can purchase the complete Esoteric Teaching Introductory Seminar DVD and many CDs of transcendental music and mantras.